for showing up to Naming Names panel. Let me just explain what I mean by naming names. If you're a nerdy person who also just incredibly hardcore, they really like to dig deep in the stuff they love. And for me, I always like to do what I call the Kevin Bacon effect. I always like to do 6 degrees of separation from people in production and actors. So that's kind of what I want to, the purpose of this particular panel. Naming some people who've done various stuff that maybe you yourself, if you never heard about them before, you might be intrigued just to see what they do. Like, for example, Akira Toriyama. When you hear that name, you think he's synonymous with Dragon Ball, which is, of course, it's his most well-known franchise. He's made the most money from that. What's that?
Which is a common misconception, actually, because he's also worked on various video games.
Various video games like Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger. But he's done like a lot of anime and manga series before then, like Dr. Slump. So, yep, exactly. Yep.
I don't generally tend to do the name thing. I'm really bad with remembering names and associating names, which is why I give people nicknames. But the one that I do remember is Richard Ian Cox. When I was a little girl, I absolutely loved Black Stallion, my absolute favorite show ever. I read all the books, loved it. I kind of thought he died when the series ended, and then one day I was looking through Gaia Online, and somebody said, everybody thinks that Richard Ian Cox created Inuyasha because he does the voice for it. And I fell out of my chair. And I did research, and again, he was alive to me.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I've actually placed a name with something.
I thought people would make that misconception to Mickey Rooney from Black Stallion. No. Because he was much more older than Richard Ian Cox.
But I loved Alec Ramsey. I was going to marry him when I was younger. But I didn't hear anything about it. He was in Breaker High for a little while, and I tried to watch it and I couldn't. So again,
also featuring not well known at the time Ryan Gosling.
Vaguely know who that is. I'm not good with names. Like I say, I give people nicknames or designations because I don't remember them.
Was that Little Hercules, Young Hercules, or
who?
I'm pretty sure one of the Breaker High characters was he played Young Hercules in like the short-lived series.
Like, was it in the same universe as the Kevin Sorbo Hercules? Really?
Ares was in it, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start off by just mentioning some people that you may or may not be familiar with, their body of work, and then we'll have a roundtable discussion. Anyone who wants to contribute anything, we'll go further with it. Again, the purpose is just like if you never heard of something before, you might be a little bit educated and maybe a little bit entertained. Do you want to go first?
Well, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect or what I was doing, so I did a little bit differently.
Okay.
Because I spent a lot of time. I originally wanted to do Clamp, because Clamp did a lot of work when I was younger and when I was really into it. But they seem to, again, have fallen off the edge of the earth. They haven't really done anything since 2007. They worked on Kabuto, and in 2009 they were working on Reservoir Chronicles. But other than that, they really haven't done much.
What year was it? Clamp brought out Blood Sea, remake of the TV series Blood Plus, which is little known, but oh my gosh, is it ever good? You have to pay an arm and a leg in order to buy the series.
Was it ever brought over here, or was it strictly...
Blood Plus?
Yeah.
Blood Plus is over here, but again, you have to pay an arm and a leg if you want the series. It's 50 episodes long. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I watched it.
And so Blood Sea is a remake of Blood Plus, which was a remake of another movie. Yeah. And I loved it. It was, I think, 12 or 13 episodes long. It was awesome. But Clamp did that as well.
They also did, they're still working on a couple of chapters a month for something called Drug and Drop, which I haven't read, and Triple Exaholic Ray. They're doing that. Clamp also recently did the character sketches for Code Geass. Mm-hmm. Which is the show that my group is intending to do cosplay for this year, if possible. But I realized that they did it when we went into and we complained about the detail for the costumes we were going to have to do, and we've done Magic Knight Rayearth, and it was gosh awful trying to do their costumes, especially for Shiro. The girls' costumes are hard, but the guys are absolutely impossible. Shiro spent months on it. took months just to get the staff right.
Well, they do a lot of very distinctive stuff with their designs and the mediums that they cover. I'm not fully familiar with Clamp outside of like Card Captor Sakura, but it's like, from my understanding, just basically with Clamp, it's just like a group of women. They work on various stuff. Is it like always just like a collaborative effort, or is like one person doing something with like some other people?
It's always within the group. It's collaborative most times, but sometimes one or two will step out if they're not needed, and they will bring some other people in, but they're generally the leads of whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But where I was, again, where Clamp kind of dropped off, I was trying to think about what kinds of anime people are watching now, and I was looking into what was making anime popular, and I was looking at it, and people will probably get mad at me, but there's almost nothing that you'll look at and watch now that really has the building blocks of anime the way that the older animes did. So what I did was I brought up and I thought of some of the more popular, what the building blocks were, what really stood out, who the artists were that really led to most of the anime that you're watching now, which can lead to a game where you think about choose an anime and try to figure out what built up to it, where they got their inspiration from. I didn't use the creator of Astro Boy because he's done so much, or Miyazaki because, again, everybody talks about them, everybody knows what they did.
Although, I'm sorry to cut you off, when you do mention Miyazaki, and it's something Megan posted on our Facebook group, she mentioned a film called Grave of the Fireflies.
Mm-hmm.
That was directed by Aizo Takahata, who is Miyazaki's, I guess, like the longest time contributor. Like, he's older than Miyazaki. They've been working like since the 60s. But not a lot of people really give Takahata his due, really. And Grave of the Fire, because he doesn't do as many movies as Miyazaki. Like, he directed one that came out last year, but then before then he directed a movie like 14 years beforehand. So he doesn't do a whole lot of movies compared to Miyazaki. But I always feel, again, very underrated. Like, I wish people would know more about Takahata and other people in Studio Ghibli. Because it's not just Miyazaki.
It's not, but his name is synonymous.
No, he's completely the public figurehead, and for a lot of good reasons. And although I don't know if you're like me, because we're with Howl's Moving Castle for today. That's actually for myself kind of where I got off the Miyazaki train. Like I don't know, it didn't really strike to me like compared to like the other ones.
I have a rule of thumb where it comes to Miyazaki. If somebody tells me about it, I hate it. If I watch it without hearing about it, I like it.
Fair enough. That's a good way.
I found that every single movie that somebody said, oh, this is a great movie, I can't find what they're seeing in it. But I went to see Howl's Moving Castle. I was walking uptown one day, and there was a poster saying it played the next day, and I got a bunch of friends together. We went to see it, and I loved it.
Funny fact, he wasn't originally supposed to direct that. It was supposed to be the guy who directed, I believe, the Digimon movie, and then he just stepped out. Yeah.
It would have been a different movie.
Yeah.
But that was my thing with Miyazaki. It's I liked Kiki's Delivery Service. I liked Castle in the Sky. I like Porco Rosso.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like Spirited Away, and I don't like Princess Mononoke. I found that they had... Anytime that somebody really tells me about it, I go and I try to watch it, and I can't see what they're saying. So I just don't have much of an interest in it.
Myself, it's just always been whenever he really hammers something in really obviously, like in Howl's Moving Castle, there's an anti-war sentiment, which I read that the original book that it was based off really had nothing with that whatsoever. It's just Miyazaki really being mad about the Iraq War at the time, so we wanted to put that in film. So you're seeing, from my eyes, a lot more of the grumpy old man Miyazaki, which there's a lot of fun character with that. I remember he had a big rant about iPads, which, remember that part of The Simpsons where Abe Simpson was like yelling at the clouds, and there's a headline, "Old Man Yells at Clouds"? That's how I picture Miyazaki, for all the awesome and sad reasons attached with that. But was there anyone else you wanted to bring up?
Well, there's quite a few that I wanted to bring up, so we can go over as many as we want to, or as few. There were two that I really wanted to bring up, but I didn't because they were done by studios and not by an individual that they would give credit to. And those were Gundam and Bubblegum Crisis, because those two are very big building blocks for most anime. Almost everything to do with cyberpunk has some relate back to Bubblegum Crisis. I'm not big on the mecha one, so I can't talk too much about that. I do have some things in here, but I do have some different artists that I have written down, as well as basically the time that they got into the anime, into creating, because that does make a difference. Because we say nowadays people don't there's nothing that's really inspirational now, but everything that's already been done, so it's hard for something to come up with something new and inspirational. And if somebody knows more than I do, because I haven't gotten a lot of the new anime, but going with the obvious one for me, which was the first one I ever really got into, which was the Sailor Moon. She was born in 1915, the creator, and I apologize, I'm horrible with names. Again, that's why I give everybody designations. Nicole Takeuchi, she was born on March 15th in 1967. She started in the business in 1986. So back then there wasn't a whole lot she had to compete with. Her obviously known ones were Sailor Moon and the codename Sailor V. For anybody I've read the manga, it's pretty cute. It's got its good parts, it's got its bad parts. But if you look at the direct descendants, because she really brought in the whole group of magical girls. She brought in the cute mascots. She brought in the romantic interest more so than the other ones did, because the romantic interest played a part in it, and it wasn't either, because there were times that Tuxedo Mask helped, there were times that he hindered, and that was a bigger thing. The transformation sequence was really popularized by this.
Yeah, because there was some series beforehand, like Cutie Honey or
Cutie Honey was
Sally the Witch, very very old stuff that was inspired from Bewitched.
Yeah.
It was really popular in Japan, and you saw a lot of studios decide to make not a full on Bewitched, but still just those elements of just magical.
Cutie
girls.
Honey was the first one that did the naked transformation sequences. But it never actually started getting popular until it was done through Sailor Moon, because Cutie Honey was pushed to an older audience. Cutie Honey was actually the very first anime that I watched outside of Sailor Moon itself. It was the first one that I actually knew going into it. This is an anime. My brother rented it from Blockbuster when Blockbuster was still around.
That's old school.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was probably the movies that they did in the 90s, because that's been around since the 70s.
Yeah, that one was, I think it was episode 4 actually, and I might still have a copy of it at home when it went on sale. But the direct successors would be things like Wedding Peach, fairly well known, not to everybody. Sabertine and Akabara, that was in 1998, and it was one of the most colorful magical girls ones, not in the content, but not the storyline, but actual color. They were very bright, very vibrant. Pretty Cure, huge series. Again, follows the Sailor Moon formula almost to a T. The adult version, which was Lingerie Senshi Papillon Rose. If anybody has seen it, it's pretty bad in every way, shape, and form. And I think there's only 3 half-hour OAVs, but it's pretty adult.
Super fan servicey.
That doesn't even begin to cut it.
Violence.
Doesn't even. No, it's all. How old is the screening?
What do you mean?
How old are the people here?
Most of them are above.
There is not a second one. There's not somebody having some kind of sex with something.
Yeah.
That's their entire outfit is a G-string and a flap, and that's it. And the first part of it is they find the main character, the cat, with the condom on her tail, finds the main hero by sniffing her crotch and finding out that's when it smells right.
Isn't it one of those times when you do watch and where you're just why do I watch these things? There's a little bit of just
No, I know I watch it. Richard told me, said, you have to watch this. So I said, I'm stupid enough to.
But I guess you got to try to separate. It's okay, there are some artistic stuff out there, but there's also just be one stuff just what it is on the surface and all that.
Is that the point when you realize you're into some weird stuff, man?
No, it was sent to me over the internet. He's like, here, watch this. So, and on the exact opposite of that was Tokyo Mew Mew. Still got the cat, but not anywhere near the same type. That came out in 2001. So there are very distinct magical girl animes that go almost exactly against the grain. 2 of them that I brought up right off the bat were from Clamp. It was Cardcaptor Sakura, which is definitely the magical girl, but doesn't fit into the same kind, mostly for the fact that it doesn't have the team. They do have Mei Ling and Lee, but they don't have the same. They're not on the same team working together with the one leader. The other one was Magic Knight Rayearth. They are working together, but it's in a fantasy setting, so it doesn't have the same requirements for the transformation or anything like that. And Pre-Tier was another one. It was from 2000. If anybody who's watched it has a transformation sequence, but her team is all men, and she gets her different costumes depending on whose hand she touches when she transforms, which I thought was an interesting twist because there's so many different costumes for that series. That is a cosplayer's nightmare. But if you have a partner, you've got a guaranteed set. But those were ones that I came up with. Does anybody else know of any other that are really good at following it that are more recent than these?
I was gonna say, Panty and Stocking has a. You're talking about like naked transformation scenes, right? Specifically, yeah. Panty and Stocking has a couple of them in the series, like particularly when Panty and Stocking transform, and then when Scanty and Knee Socks transform. They came out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And also we have Kill la Kill with Matoy and Setsuki, yes.
I've seen the first episode of Kill la Kill. I haven't seen any farther than that.
The first 12 episodes are kind of like someone called it pure unlimited fun. It's just a bunch of fun stuff. There's nothing really, and then after that first gets serious.
It's a little odd to get into.
It's 12 episodes of setting up the story, and the story actually happens in the second half.
Okay.
Yeah.
During the anime bingo, I was just talking about an anime called Star Driver, which is instead of having the female magical girl transformation, it was a male character. I don't know if it's really the team, but you do see a definite, like, the whole transformation scene and everything for him.
There's one that I really want to see. I haven't seen it yet. It's you're a magical girl or something like that, but the magical girl dies in the first episode and is a zombie and spends her.
I know that.
But bring it up, the zombie one.
Are you a zombie desu ka?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are you a zombie?
Yes.
It's pretty funny. Basically, she doesn't actually die. She loses her powers, and because she helps this one, then the guy gets her powers. He's a zombie, and then he does the transformation scene in the same way she would do it. So, like, first episode shows her doing the transformation scene, and then all this stuff happens. Then he gets the powers, and then when he transforms, it's exact same everything, but it's him instead of her.
He's wearing the dress and everything.
My brother watched it and he told me that I had to see it because he was trying to find it somewhere, but I haven't had a chance to watch
Yeah,
it yet.
there's 2 seasons, and it's pretty funny. It's funny, and then the second season is pretty serious.
No, that's good.
It's a good show.
It's definitely a good sign of a series when the second season changes from the first enough that you know that they're into it more than, it's kind of the Glee effect, only reversed. For anybody who's seen Glee, the first episode of Glee, the first season of Glee, they had a storyline. They're like, I have 2 more years. I'm getting guaranteed checks. Be damned with the storyline. So I like it when they do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I relate that kind of thing to like the reboot series, where the first 2 or 3 seasons, right, was all kind of kid friendly, comical and stuff, and then season 3 hits. And that's when things got really serious.
That's because they switched networks, so they can just do whatever they want for the most part.
And Bob was gone.
Yeah.
And it just shows how like a series grows with the audience. Because by the time that season 3 happened, right, because how long it took them to make them, the kids who watched it were now like, teens and young adults and stuff. And it's like, well, that's kind of a kiddie show. And then boom, it's
Not
now.
anymore.
Same effect when the movies came out, aka season 4, because it's been a while since after season 3.
Yeah.
It's funny when you mentioned Sailor Moon and the building blocks. I'm actually curious how things are going to be with the
Sailor Moon Crystal.
Yeah, like whatever it's going to be, whether it's like a remake or a rewrite.
Not necessarily. It's going to be a remake, but what they're doing is they're going with the original art. Because when she originally did the Sailor Moon, they didn't have enough fans and enough funding to do the art that she wanted to do, so she had to cut out all the extra little detail work. So when they're re-releasing it, they're supposedly doing the story over again, but they're doing the story with the art and sticking closer to the manga. It's funny about the manga being different with Sailor Moon because there's only about a month or 2 gap between the manga and the anime because she started writing Codename Sailor V. It got picked up. It was supposed to be turned into an anime. She decided, well, I want to play with a bigger cast than this. So she decided midway through that we're gonna put in Sailor Moon. So she released the first manga, and it got popular, and they said, well, we're okay with taking that over instead. So they took it over, and they started working with it, and she did the first set, so she had the first season. And then they're like, yeah, you made a lot of money, keep going. So she was trying to keep up with it. That's why Sailor Moon R, the first start of it with Alan and Anne, there's that arc, because they had to give her enough time to get the manga out there and to see what she was planning on doing with it. But that's the only place where there was actually any kind of a gap for it. It was basically on the heels of the manga the entire way.
And that's why filler is born.
Yeah, that happens when one medium's going and another medium's going at the exact same time. Just like one's going to go ahead than the other. That's like, what can we do at this point?
You have to find something to keep people, because you never know when a series starts out if it's going to be liked.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of trial and error. The second one is what you already mentioned about Dragon Ball. Akira Toriyama, who was born on April the 5th of 1955 and started in 1978. So he started a little bit young. He was quite a bit younger than her. But Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, Dr. Slump are some of the major ones. Dragon Ball was a good show where it mixed the original Dragon Ball. Mm-hmm. It was mixing the story, the humor, the adventure, comedy. There was some sci-fi. There was some lewdness. It was all just all over the place.
It's funny because like when he started it felt very Dr. Slump-esque, and then they reached a certain point where it's just like, no, enough of the poop jokes and all that. Let's start being a little bit more serious.
More tournaments, darn it.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Dragon Ball Z actually was one of the first series that had the over-the-top fighting style. Mm-hmm. Before that, fights were either the big mecha ones, or they were they were hand to hand, and they weren't the huge tournament style. Dragon Ball Z really brought out the tournament style, and it would have entire episodes where if they left the arena, it was impressive. Yeah. And as everybody makes the jokes, there's entire episodes where it's just a power up. Mm-hmm. But you've grown up with these characters, you've gotten used to these characters, which is another thing that wasn't really done. Dragon Ball, they were kids. The kids that were watching it was kids. Dragon Ball Z, they're adults. The kids are older, so it kind of grew up with it, like you were saying about Reboot and the other series. Not very many series will do that, because they generally for series it starts at a certain point, it ends at a certain point. That's what they have. But this was one that did change. Some of the animes that were inspired by Dragon Ball Z include Yu Yu Hakusho. Very, very close type, where it started out with some storyline and then it got to like 2 dozen episodes, and they're like, we're not going to bother with story anymore. It's just going to be fight scenes. It's a good show. I watched, I think I missed a couple in the middle, but I watched a lot of it. I always got my anime in bulk, so I'll buy 15 DVDs at one time if I could get them for $1 or something like that. So my collection is a couple hundred strong. I've still got almost 200 that I haven't gotten around to watching yet, and I watch it on the internet now because it's easier to hook up than rehooking up the VCR and changing it around whenever we change to the Wii. Yep. So still got a lot that I haven't watched. Flame of Recca was another one. I really love the motion that. I don't know why. Flame of Recca and He-Man and She-Ra. Something about the motion of it. I've always loved the way that they are. Ikitosen, which is basically battle sluts. Those are the main ones that really took after the Dragon Ball Z's style of over-the-top fighting. One would be, like, for example, like two that come to mind would be Naruto and One Piece, especially. I had Naruto down as something else, but yes, that's true too. It's a lot of over the top, and it's very. They say it's more for boys than it is for girls, and that's true for some of them. But some of them are really good no matter who you are. It depends how much work they put into the story before they drop them into the arena.
I was going to say, too, something that reminded me about One Piece. You were saying how Dragon Ball was one of the first series, really, that grew up the characters. Mm-hmm. I heard just recently, like One Piece, which has been going on for I don't know how long, just I think last year or something, they finally decided to jump things forward by 2 years. Mm-hmm. Right? And sort of age them at least a bit or something like that. Yeah.
So it's something that's happening more and more often, but Dragon Ball, if you look at it, was one of the first. Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z was one of the first ones where they did that. Mm-hmm. The next one is one of my personal favorites, is Rumiko Takahashi. She was born in October of 1957, and she started in the business in 1975. Think about that. That was quite a few years before almost anybody here was born. Mm-hmm. As much as I tease my brother about being old, he wasn't even alive then. Obvious names that come up is Ranma Half, those obnoxious aliens because I can't pronounce the Japanese version, Meizan Ikoku, which I really didn't like, and Inuyasha. So those are all major ones. But for this part, I was talking about Ranma almost specifically. She's made many contributions. As we said, she's opened a lot of doors. One of the main things that she did that a lot of people didn't, but it wasn't something I went into in detail here or brought up what they built up to, was she put in situations like where in in Japan, the arranged marriages was accepted. A lot of things like that were social situations. She put them in and she made fun of them. She made it so it wasn't such a horrible situation. She made light of everything about it. But Ranma and those obnoxious aliens, they were the first one. Dragon Ball Z made fighting big. Ranma made fighting fun. Her stories were the first one that fighting was done in any style. I don't know how many people here have actually watched Ranma. It's a school of anything goes, and literally anything did go. I used to work at the hospital on overnight shifts where I would sit with patients to make sure that they didn't hurt themselves. And I had gotten one of the manga, and it was the episode Ranma and Juliet. And the first, there was a scene, and he's saying, "So what do you know about this Romeo guy?" And the father panda holds up a sign that says, "He comes from a planet Krypton." And I laughed so hard they took me out of the room. But that was one of the ones where it was fighting. Whatever kind, if you could think of a way to do it, they were going to fight that way. Made a lot of really good characters. You really got to know the characters. All these series has lasted forever. It also opened up a lot for the harem anime, but I'm going to talk about something else for harem anime. But some of the series that got kicked out of Takahashi's brand of fighting would include 2 × 2 = Shinobuden or Ninja Nonsense. I don't know if anybody, I take it you've seen it from your reaction.
I watched a couple episodes of it.
It's absolutely stupid fighting. It's great if you have that kind of sense of humor, but the fighting itself is just, again, it's almost anything. And there's a giant smiley face that fights, and I haven't seen a lot of it. Ben 2, which is a relatively new one in 2011, where it's death battles in the grocery store to get the last bento box. Blazing Transfer Student back in 1983. 1983. They were fighting in the school, obviously, for the student part, but the entire point was to see who could make the shortest attack name would get them the strongest amount of attack, because if your attack name was too long, the other person could beat you up before you could say it. So they had to keep fighting to see who could make but if your name for your attack was too small, your attack didn't have any power. So they had to keep trying to see who could say it faster and who could come up with it. His ended up being something to do with a train, so he got the power of the train behind his fist. And this is where I put in Naruto, because this is where it comes up that, again, they have all kinds of different versions of it. Everybody has a different technique and a different style, and it's
something no jutsu.
Yeah, exactly. It's an over-the-top fighting, but more than the fact that it's an over-the-top fighting, it's not fist to fist. It's whatever they want to throw in there. If they want to turn somebody into a puppy dog or make 100 naked ladies appear, they can do that, because they have this. It's been done before. They have an opening to say that it's all right to fight however you want to fight. If you want to turn the other cheek, go ahead. Just fart while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And Jubei-chan came out in 2004. Was another one that was very big on you can do anything you want with the fights. You can grow your person. You can shrink your person. You can do whatever. But those were all examples that were opened up because of the fact that Takahashi did put that in there, that somebody else might have done it later on, but if they hadn't have had that building block, it would have been put the anime a long time behind in what they were doing. Does anybody else know of any others that they could think of where silly fighting is the main style at hand?
Jackie Chan movies.
Kinnikuman, that's another one that did also predate Dragon Ball, where it's just like, let's just do whatever we can just because, hey, it's a cartoon, let's just be as over the top as possible.
That was done a lot more in North America than it was in Japan for the anime when they first got started, because we had things like Popeye. And Popeye was, as long as you ate your spinach, which I hated as a kid, but I'll eat now. The next one that I had brought up on the list, and again, it's a set of names. I wasn't going to use this, but it was important for the anime. Masaki Kanishima, Hiroki Hayashi, Hitoshi Okuda. They created Tenchi Miyu. I wouldn't have added this one, as I said, because there were the 3 of them. But I never actually cared for the series. Has anybody watched Tenchi?
Some.
Tenchi is an older series, but what Tenchi is really good at was 2 things. It was very good at harem anime, and very good at keeping itself in the limelight by making more versions of itself. It sprouted itself off to Tenchi, Tenchi Miyu, Tenchi in Tokyo, Tenchi GTX, Magical Girl Pretty Sammy. It brought up I think in total there was 10 or 15 Tenchi Ryoki, and then they had the movies. So they did everything they can without actually having to create a new name to keep themselves going. And to me that was, you'll see a lot of shows that do that. Bubblegum Crisis did it a lot, but it did the Bubblegum Crisis, and it was quite a few years later, but Tenchi never really gave it a break. It was like, oh, we're running out of cash, there's no more flow, let's add a new end to this name. And it worked. People, there's a lot of people that know what Ryoki is and all that stuff because this is what it's from, and it lasted for a long time. Tenchi started in 1992, and I think the most recent rendition was in 2009 or 2010. They brought out another Tenchi-related item. But the harem animes that followed, Love Hina came after, and almost everybody knows Love Hina. Saber Marionette is an older one, but it's a pretty good one. It did 3 versions of itself: Saber Marionette R, and Saber Marionette J. This one is kind of a weird one because it's a harem, but there really should be no reason there's a harem. This group of people travel to a planet, and every female but one dies. So they keep cloning men. So for anybody who has, all the people in this world have to have gay sex or you don't have sex at all, and they create robots based off the blood sample from the one female. And these robots are called marionettes, and they only make X amount of them. So these robots are really, really popular, and then they make a set of 3 special ones, and this one guy happens to wake them all up, and they're all addicted to him. And he's got, included in his harem is one of the lords from the area who's in love with him and actually wants him as a person, and it's, if you ever get a chance to watch it, it is a pretty good show to give it a try. Saber Marionette. Next one I was bringing up for harems is Girls Bravo.
Oh, watch that one.
That's a very good example of harem. Yoria Yoshi and Nikima. That one's was a fairly long one. It's got a fair amount of mangas out. Manga shows, a lot of people do quite like it. Come on in, grab a seat. There's a lot of girls, and they all do their different things.
There's like, 30, 40 of them almost.
There's a lot. I think I have like the first 4 or 5 manga. Again, I got my manga like I get my anime. If I can get them a whole bunch for real cheap, I buy them and put them in my...
Perfect way to do it, yeah.
So I have a lot of random knowledge from random things. So I'll have like DVD 5 of 28, and I'll have nothing before it, nothing after it, no context to go into it. But that's the order I got it, so that's the order I watch it.
There.
The next one is one that Satoshi Tajiri, born on August 28th of 1965, got into the business in 1989, and everybody knows what he did, Pokemon. Like it or hate it, he will never have to create another game, another anime. He never has to do anything for the rest of his life. He's made his fortune with that little yellow rat. Used to play a lot of Pokemon, and almost everybody here probably still has their Pokemon games, and every now and again you bring it out because, every now and again you bring it out just because. Even if you're not playing it all the time, it's just randomly, I feel like I want to watch, or I want to play that. But it is something that it did start out quite a few things that followed after it. It really, really dived into people's desire for cuteness and for hoarding. He knew how hoarding would be important to everybody. So I blame him for hoarders. But obviously the spiritual successors to Pokemon would be Digimon, Beyblade, Monster Ranchers, and Fairy Tail in the form of the keys.
I don't know if you agree with me, but I think out of all those so far, like in terms of as it's branched out to North America, that kind of genre has really been the biggest of the mainstream because like it's so popular. There's so much merchandise. There's so much stuff that, like you said, the hoarder factor into it.
Only thing that I would really compete Pokemon against would be Hello Kitty.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Hello Kitty is one single Pokemon that has covered the entire world in its fluff. You can get Hello Kitty toasters, which I almost bought in Halifax. You can get... I have Hello Kitty condoms, so you can get them. I also have the Pokemon condoms, too. So they have Hello Kitty vibrators. They have... If you name it, there is Hello Kitty that. It's just all there is to it. That one Pokemon claimed the world.
All about the money sometimes.
It is.
You think there's Hello Kitty brass knuckles?
There probably is, whether it be legit or bootleg. Yeah.
You can find it.
I was making a
But
joke.
Hello Kitty sold its brand name to anybody. It didn't matter how cheap the merchandise was. It would stamp its name on it just so it could get its name out there. And that's pretty much the reason that they have 24 karat diamonds and statues and $4,000 and $5,000 Hello Kitty items, is because you grew up with it. That was everywhere. You couldn't not see or not know what Hello Kitty was. You'll forget about it for years, and somebody will come along, walk up, see a cat, go, "Hello Kitty," and then you're back into it. You remember everything there was to know about it, because Hello Kitty is ingrained into us, because it was the first Pokemon.
And it was like merchandising. Like there was very few of like animated or comic book stuff that really kind of branched out. You just really familiarized with Hello Kitty, which just as a brand.
Yep. They did very good. They were very smart. Another person that never has to do anything again for their life if they don't
Pretty
want
much.
to. Because again, if they can make diamond earrings and diamond statues of these things that sell for a couple of grand, they did something right. The next one that I'm going to bring up is Ryo Mizuno, born on July 13th of 1963. And although he got into the industry, he never really got into the industry. His heart mainly stayed with writing and creating of RPGs. He worked with Sword World, which is the one that he created. He liked the rules and the games of everything of D&D more than he did anime. But he created Record of Lotus War, Rune Soldier, Galaxy Angel. So these ones are all things. And Record of Lotus War is the one we're going to talk about, because that was D&D in anime form. Most of the concepts that are used in fantasy nowadays are owed to three major contributors: Tolkien, D&D, and Lotus War. Especially where it comes to anime, it goes back to Lotus War, the style, the art. Lotus War was the first D&D campaign that was used as an anime, but it was not the first time it was animated. Lord of the Rings was animated in 1987. 1978. I have 1878 because I'm backwards. The Dungeons and Dragons animated series, which I have at home in a DVD, was 1983. Both predated Lotus War, but it was the vision, what Lotus War actually brought out, a lot of the art for it that's still used by people. The fantastic fantasy that follows in the images that Lotus War started was Bastard. It had the quest, it had the different classes. I didn't go with anything that had too much comedy in it, on the fact that Lotus War was not a comedy. It had a second season that was not nearly as well liked. The main character, Deedlit, is still, to most people's minds who are into the older anime, what an elf should look like. Berserk, anybody who watched that is a really good fantasy. It's the one thing I like the most about Berserk is the fact that if you cut out the opening credits and the ending credits, you have a 13-hour movie. And it is bloody and disgusting, and it's filled with everything that's wrong in the world, but it is a damn good anime. I hate everything that Berserk's about, but that's the first anime series I collected in full. I had 3 copies of it over the couple of years. I have posters to it. I had the entire manga series up until I stopped working at Gamezilla. I could not get enough of Berserk, but I hated everything it was about. But the way it was thrown together was amazing. And again, it followed a lot of the same storyline, where it was a campaign. It was all done out like that. Tales of Eternia, and the direct descendant for Record of Lotus War would have been Legend of Crystania, which was done in 1997. I had the movie and 2 out of the 3 for the OAV series, but I never realized which one I was missing, if it was the first one, middle, or end, because it never really made a lot of sense to me. But I have 2 of the 3. But those are the ones that are the most like Record of Lotus War. But again, if you look at any fantasy, you'll see a lot of the art, the monsters, the characters have a lot of basis from that series, Lotus War. Did you want me to keep going? Because I can stop whenever.
Well, I was just both flabbergasted, but mostly impressed with the fact that you came up with a lot of names. I've only thought of just one person, and it was only based on the fact that it was a subject of something that I did for an audio commentary for a DVD. So the person I just wanted to bring up was Osamu Dezaki. He was a very old school director, and by old school, like he started in the 60s for Mushi production for stuff like the first Astro Boy series, and actually was the animation director for the 1969 Rankin Bass Frosty the Snowman TV special. He did a lot of a variety of genres. Like he would do directing for like Aim for the Ace, Rosa for Size, Gogol 13, The Professional, Cobra, The Mighty Orbots. He also would do the storyboards for those productions as well. He has a very distinct style in his directing, no matter what the genre would be. He would put things like split screens, like stark lighting, and a freeze framing a scene, which it's kind of hard to describe, but the only way he put it would be calling postcard memories, where it's just like just still shots, but there's like some pixelated stuff. A little bit of myself, because Amanda was mentioning a lot of stuff that she herself would be either viewing, buying, and all that. I actually bought on eBay an animation cell for one of the Lupin the Third TV specials that he did, Harry Mouse Treasure, which in that one, the character Zenigata, he's a detective always after the thief Lupin the Third, and he can be written either competent or bumbling idiot. In Harry Mouse Treasure, he's a complete bumbling fool, 100%. You think he makes Inspector Clouseau be like, hey, you really have to be on the ball in these things. So much far that Zenigata in that special is always about ramen noodle and having a ramen noodle lid holder. And I have a cell of him pouring water on ramen, but I don't have the overlay cell of the ramen. So it looks like he's just pouring water on nothing. But I would highly recommend checking out stuff that Dazaki did, and probably a lot of stuff that Amanda was talking about. He probably was involved with it. I don't know off the top of my head like some of those stuff, but he did do a lot of variety that good chances are he probably either directed it or did storyboard for that. And that's all I got. So,
well, like I said, I did mine by looking at the newer anime and putting together how it was made.
Yeah.
Did you want me to continue? I don't know if there's a time frame for this.
We got a few minutes left. Let's go through them.
I only have a couple left, I
Sure.
think. Yes, that was the two more. Shoujo Kawarima was born on February 20th of 1960. Started business under his own name in 1963, but he worked on Macross, Visions of Escaflowne, and Patlabor. Macross was the grandfather of almost every major sci-fi anime, especially the space mecha type. The only contestant to this title would be Sunrise Studios' Gundam. Macross was a better mix for all ages because it had love story, it had music, it had singers, it had entertainers, it had giant aliens, it had battles, and it mixed together in a way that people still love it. It came across as Robotech to us, but a lot of his other works followed very closely, but the ones that I'm going to go over that it really gave a place for them to start would have been the mobile mecha monsters include Voltron, Armored Troops Voltums, Gunbusters, and Star Blazers all came basically from this. It's another series or another genre that I don't really follow a lot of because I'm not a big mecha fan, so I saved the two mecha ones for last. But anybody who's seen, especially the transforming robots in space, became very popular with with Macross. Also, the ability to blend more than one major theory, not just this is a mecha. This series will always be associated with mechas, but it's also the first one that had pop singers in it, that they were important. It was one of the big ones, the longest running ones. It broke down into so many other series of its own name, and it worked on Robotech Shadow Council isn't that old, but there have been a lot of stuff that was based off of the works that started. And again, you're thinking, we're looking back in the 1982 time frame, so something that has that kind of staying power is amazing.
Robotech I always put as the example of how anime actually crossed over to North America, how it exploded, and there's a divided audience of people who feel that the edits and changes that Robotech made were beneficial just because or destroyed it. Like it's either one of those camps, really, of this thinking.
It's going to be a hot debate, but again, love it or hate it, you can't ignore the fact that if it didn't come across, most of the stuff that we watch wouldn't have come across.
Because it started like tape trading and all that, and more stuff like you would discover from overseas, and that would be brought over here much more so like in the later 80s and the 90s.
My brother always thought that he never understood that Astro Boy came from outside of North America. Whenever anybody said something, but the mouse doesn't move, he'd say, it's a cartoon, the mouse don't move with the way the people... He never realized, but that was his thought. But it was those things, the Voltron, the Macross, the Robotech, all that stuff that was really what we were watching when we were younger, not realizing. Most people can, when they say their first anime, they'll say their first anime, and then they'll think and they'll go, actually, I watched this first.
Yeah.
Because if I ask anybody here, my first was Sailor Moon. Then I think about it and I go, no, it was probably Voltron. But a lot of people do that. When you answer what was your first anime, you think of your new one, your golden.
It's like the first one that you realize you knew what
Yeah.
anime was when you're coming.
But-
I was such a dumb little kid. I didn't know that until like Pizza Cat say, "Hey, we are a cartoon from Japan." That's when I realized, oh yeah, there are cartoons from Japan.
But Sailor Moon was my big one. That's what I say to everybody. And then I think and I go back, and most people do the same thing. Older people, not the younger people who are growing up with it readily available. I still remember when I started collecting anime, you couldn't get it anywhere. You had to go to a comic book store, go down to the back where that creepy old guy was standing there with a special book. And you're like, hey, I want to see the book. And you'll flip through, and there's, I don't know if anybody here knows Chris Withers, but he paid $400 for the first season of Ranma Half on VHS.
Were they
Four.
fan subs?
Nope, they were official, but
Okay.
$400 plus tax at used to be a Sorcerer's Stone. I bought the same first season of Ranma Half on DVD for $5.99 at Value Village.
I remember
And
when
I messaged him and said, ha!
I remember hearing when Dragon Ball Z was getting really big over here, people wanted to see more episodes, and in particular the ones that were not translated yet. So they would pay a lot of money at conventions or tape trading for fan subs, and it went as far as that there were fan subs war, that certain fan subbers would steal from other fan subbers and say, this is mine, and they would do like rap disses on the fan sub opening credits, like do not buy from such and such and all that.
Does anybody here remember King Kong when it used to be here? Nope.
Basically, like, was there anything before King Kong? But I'm just going to say, like the first
It was
convention
the first
in St.
major
John.
convention in St. John. That was where I got my first fan sub from Edwin Holmeslaughter. It was the Sailor Moon set, so I could see the S and the Super S before it came out, and then I got a bunch. Then I went away for vacation one day, and when I still had an anime collection that could fit into 2 boxes, and he borrowed them and copied everything, both the fan subs and the actual legal copies that I had, and I never loaned him another thing again.
The good times of pre-internet, huh?
Yep, that was it. The last one that I have here is Hideki Eno, was born in May 22nd of 1960 and started the business in 1982. Most people remember him as the person who had to get off his meds to finish his series.
Yeah.
He was the creator for Neon Genesis Evangelion, His and Her Circumstances. I read the first manga, His and Her Circumstances, and I never wanted to have anything to do with it again. I absolutely hated it because I thought the entire series could have been concluded in the very first manga, but I watched the anime and I really liked the anime.
And it's funny because the anime, they went with the direction of the manga for like the first half, and then the next half was just like, we're just going to make it more comedy. And the author was really mad that they made that decision because she wanted more romantic elements in it.
But the first manga, if you read it, you're like, okay, so she's an overachiever, he's an overachiever. They're together. Who gives a damn? But when you watch the anime actually makes it quite a bit easier to get into. But it's not what I'm going to talk about. It's obviously Evangelion, because it is possibly one of the best known series for what it is. If you go and you type top X amount of anime, X amount of best anime in the world, Neon Genesis Evangelion is on that list somewhere. There's almost no list you're going to find unless you go for Magical Girl. You're not going to. Everything else is going to have Neon Genesis Evangelion in it somewhere. You could even look for fantasy, and it's going to be in there because it was the top anime for so many years.
And Ono himself, like you were mentioning his controversy, but like he contributed a lot to Studio Ghibli. Well, pre-Studio Ghibli, like he got his first start with doing layout for some of the monster sequences in Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, and always loyal to Miyazaki, and they had a good bond. So much so that Miyazaki's last movie before he retired, The Wind Rises, he cast Ono as the main character.
The main thing that Evangelion really did was where Gundam and Macross brought a lot of the space battles, the giant robots. Evangelion brought it back to Earth. They were single-person carriers. They were the size of buildings. They fought monsters, well, angels. But it brought it back to Earth, and it started giving characters. You had the whiny Shinji, the overcompensating Asuka, traumatized Misato, emotionally stunted Rei. But this was the first time where you're looking at mecha anime where there were characters. What do you mean it's not just a pilot? That's a character. It has a personality. We know that personality. That wasn't done. But so this is really where that came into, that mecha could have spirit. The biblical big boy actually brought a lot of interest. If anybody's ever seen, I think it's called Raxophone. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But it could basically be an Evangelion. It tries so hard. It even has the exact same character makeups when you look at the characters. Bokureno, Daigard, Dual Parallel World is another one that's really, really, really close, and I really like that. There's one part in the very first episode of Duel where somebody finds an ancient relic and the screen splits in two, and one of the people throws it in the garbage and the other one keeps it. And then throughout the series it just shows you what the differences are in the world because of the fact that it made that change. But it does have the giant robots, and it's a very interesting series. So those are the ones that I brought up. Does anybody else think of any major building block animes?
Yeah, or just people that you really admire that just like, maybe you should check out their work and whatnot.
Have you guys ever seen like Serial Experiments Lane and Ghost Town? And
I've seen
there's some of the bigger
Experiments
ones.
Lanes.
Like, it's a little bit different. There's a really strange, weird thought about it. It reminds me a lot of like the older anime that I watched. Even Dot Hack Sign had a little bit of something similar to it. And the whole, I know with Lane, a lot of it was the fear of being connected to everybody, and the actual difference, the fact that we were already connected beforehand, had a little bit of that God complex kind of thing going on there as well. But it was really good. It's one of those anime that you have to watch the entire way through. Same with Ghost Town. Ghost Town was really odd. It felt like a little bit of a kid's anime, and then halfway through you're like, this is really serious, and then in the end you're just not even sure what really happened. But they bring a lot of strange Shinto elements into it, which is really strange because you don't really see that in Serial Experiments Lane unless you look into it afterwards. You think about it, because like they try to play her off as God. And when they translate it to English, they're always saying God, 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 as in like the one God. Yeah. When you really look at it, they're basically just talking about her as being a minor God, but having a big influence in the parts that she comes in and actually goes in and actually tries to change.
How long ago was that made?
Lane?
Quite a long ago. It was
It was
when it first
mid-90s.
came out,
Okay.
it was talking about the internet before the internet was actually the internet.
It's always fun to watch those kind of
They didn't
things.
call it the
No matter
internet.
what it is, if it's like through the looking glass, like
Yeah.
just like this is what computers are going to be look like, or cell phones. And
Yeah,
all
well,
that.
it was pretty real because, like, if you look at it, and like one of the things that they did in it, a lot of people don't notice, is that they, in all the shadows in the show, they put little red dots, and the little red dots.
Oh, so like just like Archie comic book style.
They're
And all that.
basically just supposed to show that every single one of those little red dots is just a connection to
Very
the internet
nice.
or a connection to people, and that was what she was supposed to stand as. She's supposed to stand as the main connection for all of them, basically, without anybody knowing that she's a connection.
Yeah.
And it played a lot to the fact that, like, in the future where we are now, that you would be connected to everybody, and that every single person would have some kind of connection to you, but you wouldn't be paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe that was possible. They thought that if we were all going to be connected, everybody's going to be aware constantly that we're connected. If you think about it now, you go and you want to go message somebody on Twitter or something like that, or you want to go talk to somebody on Facebook, you just do it. You don't think about how you're connected and how
Exactly.
10 years ago that wouldn't have existed.
Exactly. Anyone else want to bring up something?
You mentioned Ghost Town, which made me think I really like the paranormal animes and the ones
Yes.
that draw on the traditional influences of yokai and
Yeah.
monsters and ghosts and demons and stuff. I love those animes, and I don't know what anime maybe really started bringing those traditional elements into anime. I don't know what anime maybe started.
If you're
it,
looking
but-
for along lines for a lot of the spiritual and stuff like that, might not seem like it, but Devil Hunter Yoko would have had
Yeah.
a big impact in it because it was accepted over in North America, and it wasn't the same kind, but it brought over a lot of series after it that were based on something that has supernatural impact. Prior to that, there weren't a whole lot of them because it was ghosts in North America and ghosts and monsters in Japan were completely different. So it was something they didn't touch on because of the fact that our understanding of it and their understanding of it was different. It was basically, if you're going to see it in an anime before that, in North America side at least, you're going to see it as a ghost or monster being a one-time attack. But Yoko's kind of, it's only a 6-part series, but it goes through a couple of different types, and it works a little bit more with them. And it was where there was the humor and everything, it was very big for that as well. It opened this door. If you're ever looking for an interesting show to watch and you have a pretty good tolerance for really stupid humor, Ghost Stories is a good one.
Which version though? It's like, isn't that like, from my understanding, like the English dub decided to go completely
That's
off the wall.
That's the one you actually, if you have a good sense of humor, you're not going to be easily offended. That's one that I suggest to people because what they did for that series to make it unique was they refused to give the voice actors scripts.
Yeah, it was very
The voice
improvised.
actors were not allowed to have scripts, so they had to say whatever came to mind. So it's very crude. There's one scene, and it's got this little boy running down a racetrack because he's trying to learn how to run faster, and his buddy's standing in the background, run like there's some big black guy after your ass.
Stuff like that.
In other words,
that was
they
it.
had to ad-lib the whole series.
Yeah.
That was it. They had no idea what was going on. They didn't know what the story was behind it. There's one character who's supposedly a religious freak, and she keeps saying that the other girl's going to go to hell for her lesbian tendencies, which she has none of, but they don't have scripts. They're like, this looks like this is happening. The first probably half dozen episodes are really good. After that, it's really funny because you're not expecting it, but after that, once you start expecting what they're going to say, there's no real story to it. But
That's how I felt with Crayon Shin-Chan when Funimation brought it as Shin-Chan. It was just like, let's just ump up the adult humor. So it's like, it's funny for the first couple episodes, and it's just like, same old. That's why I always cite Pizza Cats as being like a good standard. We're just like, let's just make this English script something unique, but it didn't feel repetitive or boring in any way. And I think stuff like after that, like Ghost Stories or Shin-Chan, they followed that same model.
But Ghost Stories, again, where it didn't have the script, a lot of things that they came after it were just a lot more relaxed.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to that kind of change? Or do you feel like it should be like depending on the material used?
I don't think that would ever be another good for any other series to ever do ever again, because it, like I said, by the time you get to episode 7,
It's easily overplayed.
Yeah.
it's overplayed. You've got no story built up whatsoever. But it's good to have something where you can see that this is dubbed. This is the epitome of what dubbed would be, because this kind of looks like what they're doing. This kind of looks like what they're saying.
It's kind of like The Hangover. Like, it was kind of funny the first time, and then when they came the second, you're like, oh, there's a second.
But it's something people should watch if you ever get the chance, because it will give you a better respect for things that are dubbed and subbed, especially older stuff that's dubbed. If you watch this and then you go back and you look at what else was dubbed in the early times, like original Cardcaptor Sakura or original Sailor Moon, where people are always bitching about how badly they were subbed or how badly they were dubbed, they could have done that to it.
Yeah.
Keep it in mind. That's a good reference point.
Yeah. That could have been Dragon Ball for all intents and purposes, even though they did edit it a lot. But just imagine if they did the exact same route that she was mentioning with Ghost Stories. Let's just like make
You'll
whatever
never
we
look at
want.
dub the same.
No.
One of the other big things I want to bring up that's really not really bring out a lot, it's more towards manga than anime, but like for me, like I really like a lot of horror manga. It's one of my bigger things. Not so much like the gore and stuff like that, but just stuff that like gets to you, because the Japanese outlook on fear and the Japanese outlook on like spirits and things like that, it's very different from what we have, and it's disturbing in a sense sometimes. And I've seen a lot of American movies come out that are either directly ripped off of Japanese show or directly ripped off a Japanese movie beforehand, but like one of my bigger ones, of course, everybody knows him as Junji Ito. He's amazing. The stuff that they've done is amazing. I just read one earlier today, and it's one of the ones I haven't read yet, and I was blown away by it. But I notice a lot of people, when it comes to anime and stuff like that, especially manga and everything, they don't really think about that. The genres, they look at it's almost a little bit limited, if you know what I mean? Like, it's
Try to imagine what you would do if everybody went to a camp with somebody from another part of the world, and you had to exchange ghost stories. How different would they be?
Completely. I went to China last year, and it was nuts. Some of the horror stories, like I tell them a horror story about just going around and something that happened to me while I was in the forest, and then they come in and they talk about some crazy girl's finger getting bent back, and all of a sudden they're crazy jazz and girls hanging from the ceiling with long crazy hair, and like it was just completely different.
Well, here's the thing about like with that culture shock and going back when you mentioned manga. As a manga reader, or if you watch anime, let's just go with subs. Do you prefer everything as be authentic as possible, like honorifics and the like, or do you feel like it's not needed?
Sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. Like
it is dependent on the
there's
material.
Stuff that's like, I don't know. Usually more with humor, if you're just looking at like jokes and stuff like that. If they have like I was watching earlier some of her Polar Bear Cafe.
Okay.
There's parts in there where he comes in, the penguin comes in and he gets the exact same thing every single time. He just says like a mocha cafe or something like that.
Yeah.
But then he always afterwards he asks for a second one. I don't know how to say it in Japanese, but it starts with osu something or whatever it is. And when he asks it, it sounds like a lot of different words. And the polar bear every single time will come in and he'll say a different word in Japanese, and he'll come out dressed like a samurai or something like that that sounds similar to the Japanese word. You can't watch that in English.
And that's the thing. Like, my viewpoint is just like it has to be something that you don't have to do a lot of research on. That the worst thing that I know is like when I'm subtitles, people who just like have to explain everything in the subtitles. That's why there's liner notes. That's why there's translation notes.
Yeah. If you're really interested, then you can go back and look.
So if they wanted to like change an honorific to something that's something like Mr. or Mrs. or something like that, I think that's fine.
Yeah, she was like Lady Kagome. They're always doing that because Shippo was tiny. It was called Kukiyosu, whatever the heck. But it's the same kind of idea. You know, like, change it, but like I've seen a lot of them where they'll just go on. You hear chan 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 kun kun kun. Like, oh god, like it just sounds bad because everything else is Americanized, but then that isn't.
If they sound really English, they should not be adding words that are not English to it. It doesn't make sense because you're not going to go up to a friend at school or a teacher and say chan or sama or something like that.
That being said, that like you can only go as far, and if you go too far with that, you're removing the original content. Like something similar example, like for Pokemon when that first came out, they decided to change like the rice balls into jelly donuts. It's a little bit dumbing down. It's like
popcorn balls. I know from one episode.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like these are things from a different country for a reason.
Things are different, but when you're talking to somebody and you're saying all the rest of the conversation is perfectly English, and then you go chan.
Yeah, stuff like that.
And it just is blaringly obvious. Like if they're going to have a rice ball is fine. It's a thing. A thing is fine, but you don't have to add chan. You can add sir, friend, ma'am. It sounds more realistic.
I think if it's like personally, if it's subbed, then I'm okay with having that subtitles. But if it's dubbed,
it's the voice.
To, like, make it more.
Sometimes, like it depends on the sub and how often they use it. I remember speaking with a friend of mine who does a lot of subtitle work for DVDs, and he was debating of putting in honorifics for it, but then he decided not to because he felt it was too fan sub-esque and a little bit too amateur.
But if you don't sound natural saying it, if you've gone to school and had the lectures and the lessons and that's the way you talk, yes, say it. If it's not how you would talk to somebody regularly, or it's not going to sound natural coming out of your mouth, don't put it in there.
So somebody coming in and saying like, "Oh, how are you doing? Okay, cunt," or something like that. You just pull it like. I've heard some that just sound ridiculous.
Like having a lawyer look at you and go, "Dude."
Yeah.
Like you're a voice actor for a Japanese anime, you know, at least pick up the pronunciation.
So I want to thank all of you for listening to us. Take yammering along, especially from me. I hope anything just like from this that you start viewing these mediums a little bit more detailed, that if you like something, check out other stuff that person also did. You might also like that. You might be open to something completely different altogether. So I want to thank Amanda for coming out today to discuss about things, and hope we do more like this down the road, whether it be for another anime event next year or just like any discussion panels. Like we have comment cards. If you like this kind of stuff, let us know, or something similar, or something you yourself want to pitch to us. We want to hear it.
And I'm going to suggest to people, when you're watching your next couple of animes, try to think where the different aspects of it comes from. What do you think is going to, from this anime that you're watching now, what do you think somebody else is going to use from that?
Yeah, it is a ripple effect, like from either from a generation before or something that might inspire generations ahead.
You'll actually find yourself very amused with what you come up with. As I said, I did a lot of research while I was doing this, and I was very amused to be putting the blocks together and building these little, these new animes that are out there.
Yeah. So, thank you, everyone.